Dear respected Thai, dear noble community, today is the 18th of June in 2017, and we're in the Still Water Meditation Hall in the Upper Hamlet Dharma Cloud Temple, Plum Village. Can you hear? Okay. Walking up to the hall from Shunha Temple at the bottom of the hill, I did my best to practice deeply not thinking while I'm walking, especially not thinking about this Dhamma talk. I practice just to enjoy my step, to enjoy the sounds of the birds in the pine trees, the sound of the wind moving through the needles, the cracks on the earth beneath my feet from the dried mud. And I don't feel alone. I don't feel alone at all. Today I wanted to share a little bit about how we practice with loneliness. How we live in a way that isolates ourselves emotionally, physically, mentally. How in our way of thinking, speaking, and acting we separate ourselves from others, from ourselves, and what we can do so that we are no longer lonely, so we no longer feel that isolation. I don't know if you know this phrase, FOMO. Have you heard of this phrase? Maybe the younger people, that you can explain to the elders. When I was young, I wasn't aware of this emotion that is called FOMO. FOMO is an acronym. Is it better like this, or shall I? Yeah. Or maybe better, I'll write it like this. FOMO means fear of missing out. The fear of missing out. Has anybody ever felt FOMO? Oh, come on, be honest. I'm not sure you're human unless you felt at some point. Maybe when you were in kindergarten and there was some new toy, and you saw some of your friends playing with that toy. Maybe it's a doll, maybe it was a new ball, a new puzzle. And when you came over to play with that ball, with that doll, and your friend said, "No, it's mine." And how did you feel? FOMO. It's a new language, but it's expressing an old feeling. A feeling of separation, of loneliness. Please, you're not welcome. You're not invited to come play. FOMO. And I had an insight recently, thanks to the Dharma talk of my sister, Sister Loving Kindness, here a few weeks ago. She was sharing about the second noble truth. In Buddhism, we talk about 4 noble truths. For some of you, this is a review. The first noble truth is ill-being. It's the truth of ill-being. It means something doesn't feel right inside, something feels unpleasant, broken. Sometimes it's described like a cart that has a broken axle. If you ride in that cart, it's very unpleasant, always getting jostled, hitting the side of the cart. It's a very unpleasant ride. Ill-being, dukkha in Pali. And the Buddha invited us to look deeply into this ill-being in ourselves. And as we learned from Tai, our teacher, it's because this ill-being is just one side of the coin. On the other side we have well-being. They cannot be separated. So when we look deeply into our ill-being, in this case our separation, feeling not invited, not invited to come play, then we feel ill-being. We feel something inside ourselves. It's not quite happiness. So the first thing is to look deeply into our suffering, our ill-being. And the second part is the path to ill-being, or the causes of ill-being. What is it that we do in our daily lives that leads us to this ill-being? Why, when we are not allowed to come play with that new toy, do we feel this sense of isolation? So when we look deeply, we see that there might be some desire there, like when our ancestors had some food to eat and we were hungry, and they turned and rah at us. It's like the cats in Shunha. If you put all the food in one bowl, be careful. And 3 cats come at the same time. Yeah. Maybe one cat will start to eat, and then when the other cats start to come near, rah! Or maybe there's fear in the other person. Maybe something we've said, something we've done, has brought about fear in the other person. They don't feel comfortable when we are there. They don't feel at ease. Something we've said, something we thought. Maybe in the past we have scared someone else. We have excluded someone else. Maybe in our way of thinking, our way of speaking, we haven't understood the other person, understood what their needs are, what their joy is. We've made them feel hurt. And because of that, we encounter an obstacle, something that cuts us off. So, in the practice of Plum Village, we always come back to ourselves. We don't blame the outside condition. We say, what have I done to bring about this ill-being? What is it in me that has caused this unpleasant sensation, this unpleasant feeling? That is the second noble truth, the path of ill-being. So when my sister Loving Kindness gave a talk on the Four Noble Truths, she shared about the fear of being separated from those we love as one of the causes of ill-being. In the tradition, the Buddha talked about three principal causes. One is to be separated from those we love. The second is to have to hang out with the people we don't love. To be forced to be around or be in a situation that is unpleasant, that we don't want to be in. And the third is to get caught in sensual pleasures, caught in desire, craving for sensual pleasures. We feel a lack. We want something and we cannot have it. And so we suffer. We suffer. We have pleasant feelings in the past. And when we think about that thing, it overwhelms our mind. We want to have it at all costs. And so we suffer. In the tradition, those are the three main causes of ill-being. So when my sister shared this way, I said, FOMO, the fear of being separated from those we love. That's FOMO. We love our friends. We care about them. We want to be near them. And we suffer because we cannot. We feel cut off. We have not been invited to come in. And so the feeling of sadness, of loneliness comes up. Or we feel we have to suffer to be around the people we don't like. I remember when I first wanted to become a monk in Plum Village. And I was so excited. I was many months I was ready to ask Thai, our teacher, can I become a novice? And I was living in Boston, and Thai was coming on a tour in 2003. And I had given up my place in a graduate program to study Buddhist studies because I realized that's not where I would find happiness. That what I wanted to do was live in the Sangha. I wanted to practice what the Buddha taught, not just study it. And so I went on a retreat that Thai offered nearby Boston. And the facilitator of my group was a young monk, also an American. And he's no longer here. In fact, by the time I showed up in the fall, he'd already left. And I was so excited. I came up to him. I want to come to Plum Village and I want to become a monk. And I say, how is it in Plum Village? And he kind of gave me a look and he said, for some people, it is paradise. For others, it is a prison. I thought, oh. I think that for many people it is a paradise. But there are moments when it feels, I think for some of us, like a prison. I'm pretty lucky. For me, it's mostly been a paradise. And in my life as a monk, I never thought of Plum Village to be a prison. Yeah. Because I always practice to come back and see that it is the prison that I create is in my own mind. That it's not someone outside of me. It's not my community that puts me in a prison. Only I can put me in a prison. But at that time, that is what he was feeling. I could see it in his eyes. He was suffering. So he was a monk for, I think, 1 or 2 years, and then he left the Sangha. And afterwards, he suffered greatly because he left the Sangha. Sometimes when we're in the Sangha, in a community that is offering all the wonderful conditions we need in order to be happy and free, even though we have all those conditions, we cannot see it. And we get caught on little things. And those things become a prison. So that was a lesson for me before I came to Plum Village. I said, I will not live in Plum Village in such a way that I let it become a prison. But I will live in such a way that it makes me free, that I can be happy and free in every moment. So when we are caught in a situation and we feel we cannot get out, we are trapped with that person who will not stop talking. Sometimes when we are a monk and we give a consultation, it feels a little bit like that. I'll be honest. I practice coming back to my breath and breathing. I say, this person, they wanted to have a consultation with me. It's not their fault that they have not stopped talking for 45 minutes. And I practice listening deeply and breathing. And I know that if I just listen with compassion and understanding, that can already lead to a transformation. I don't have to say anything. And so I transform my feeling of being caught. Yeah. But sometimes our roommate, sometimes our mentor can also make us feel trapped like that. We feel we are under his thumb. Sometimes our president can make us feel like that. It's because we let ourselves get caught in fear. So this FOMO, I saw when I looked deeply into it, is deeply linked with this fear, this suffering coming from being with those we don't love. Because if we can transform our feeling of not loving that person, right away we suddenly find ourselves in a position where we are with someone who we love. We just have to change our mind. Yeah. We see that actually that love comes from within ourselves. It's not the other person that is unlovely. Even that they say things that are hurtful, even they say things that are not kind, things that they act in such a way that is aggressive. But our deep bodhisattva practice here in Plum Village is to transform our own mind, not to blame the other person for our suffering. And I've learned that when I find myself caught in that prison of being with someone I feel I don't love, all I need to do is change my mind, to have compassion and understanding for that person's suffering. And right away, they become, again, someone I can love, someone I can care about. So this fear of missing out is conditioned by another kind of fear I call folly. Well, it's the fear of looking in. This is a very typical human folly. The fear of looking in. When I was a young monk, one time I was invited to go on a trip with one of my elder brothers. And at one point I got very angry at my elder brother. You know, in the West, we are used to feeling equal. Tai called it a complex of equality. We have the complex of superiority. We want to make sure we are always higher than someone else. There's a complex of inferiority. We feel like the others are always better than us, that we are not worthy. And they are always more talented, more joyful, more free than we are. But there's also a third complex, the complex of equality. And this one is very difficult for us, especially in the West, to accept. How could the Buddha talk about a complex of equality? We should all be equal, right? No? In France, they say fraternité, liberté, égalité, fraternité. Yeah. But when we look deeply into this idea of equality, what does it really mean? Well, we have to base it on something. Does it mean we all have the same salary, for example? Does it mean we should all have the same color house? So if you have a red house, then I should have a red house. Or does it mean that we should all have the same job with the same importance? Or the same amount of happiness? Maybe we should all have the same amount of happiness. So if someone has more happiness than me, I should drag them back down to my level. Right? Sometimes it feels like that. Does anybody know anyone? Has anyone ever done that to someone? Oh, come on. You're feeling really rotten. Like, why are these people all so happy? You come in and you yell and you say something cynical and unpleasant, and then you drag everyone down to your level. It's like, okay, now we're equal. Égalité. So you see, this equality has some problem. We all want to be equally miserable. Or we all want to be equally happy. But nobody out of line. Nobody can be more happy than the other person. So the Buddha pointed out that this is a kind of trap. This complex of equality gives rise to feelings of jealousy, trying to keep up with the Joneses, we say in my country. He has a new MacBook Pro, so I am of that same level as him. I should have a new MacBook Pro. He has an iPhone? The new iPhone. Well, gosh darn it. I better get that new iPhone. He has a electric car, a Tesla. Wow, gosh. Look who's helping save the planet. Well, I better have a car like that. Yeah. We have to consider ourselves dignified enough a person to have the same consumer items as everyone else. So this is our trap that we've created for ourselves. the complex of equality. So when we're caught in this wanting to try to have what the other person has, or be what the other person is, then we also suffer. Yeah. That is part of this loneliness. We don't have what the others have. We don't have all the people around them. We wish we were in that group. We were part of that special group, that special secret group. They're making all the real decisions. That's where all the really cool people are. If I could only get into that group, then that would be paradise. Then everyone would be coming to me and asking me what we should be doing. Don't think that the monastics don't get caught in this kind of thinking either. Because we are also human. We are human beings. When I was a young monk and the biggest thing was to go on a trip with Thai. If you got invited to go to Vietnam with Thai, the first trip going back, and many brothers and sisters did not have a chance to go. And then you start to think, well, I got invited to go. Oh, be careful. Yeah. So this complex of equality, superiority, inferiority, we heard about it before the chanting. Thai invites us at the beginning of our chanting, when we stand together as brothers and sisters, the monastics, to liberate ourselves from the complex of superiority, inferiority, and equality. Yeah? So we don't suffer when someone else gets what we want. Yeah. So to come back to my story of my being with my brother on this trip, we are the same age, but he's much older in the Dharma than me, and I was a young brother, and I thought I was invited to go out, so I'm going to get to give Dharma talks. I'm going to get to answer questions, do all the, of course, important things. And I found myself inviting the bell, not being able to say anything. Just following my breathing, smiling, learning to practice that each step that I take is a Dhamma talk. That's what we are taught as a novice. When we are novice, we want to get up right away and give a Dhamma talk. And then we are invited to practice mindful walking, because our mindful walking can be like a Dhamma talk. But sometimes, I want to give a Dhamma talk. We feel like that. We feel like we want to. And so you see sometimes the younger brothers, and they try to find people to give Dhamma talks to. We can listen to a sound of the bell. Come back to our breathing. At that time, I hadn't learned to have much compassion for my elder brother. Now I'm a little bit an elder brother, and I've learned the suffering of an elder brother, and I have much more compassion for him in having to put up with me as a younger brother. So I wanted to try to have my equality. And so one day, at the beginning of a retreat, and I tried to find for my group of people that I could give a Dhamma talk to. And at the beginning of the retreat, I offered to train some lay friends to invite the bell so that they could, like we do here, listen to a bell before each activity during the retreat. And at that time, my elder brother, because it was very late, and we were giving the orientation on arrival day, and he said, "That can wait until tomorrow." And I felt cut off. I felt, that's it. If I had some gloves, I would throw them down. You know, in the old time in Europe, when you throw your gloves down, it's a challenge. Now we step outside. That's what I felt like inside of myself. And so but I was lucky that I had my practice. I had the Dharma to take refuge in, and I had the mindfulness trainings. We have a wonderful training, the 4th mindfulness training, where we're invited to practice loving speech and deep listening. And part of that practice is to recognize when we have anger and to remove ourselves from the situation. And so fortunately, that's what I practiced doing. And I did it, I could say I did it pretty well. I went outside, and luckily we were not staying in the same room. So I went outside and I practiced walking meditation. And it was a beautiful forest, so I was able to, in the nighttime, just practicing walking up and down in the darkness. And I really recommend to you walking up and down in the darkness, practicing walking meditation, because you watch your mind like it's a movie. You see the movie of flipping through of your thinking very clearly. You don't have so much distraction, so much visual distraction. Sometimes when I was young, when I started practicing meditation, I'd like to go into the forest on a new moon night when it's very dark and just practice slowly walking through the forest. Just being aware of the trees, being aware of my step, my breathing. And I see the movie of my mind, all these stories that I'm telling myself. Low-budget film. Actually, it's very high budget. This kind of thinking is very tiring, very tiring. It takes a lot of glucose. Our brain is just sucking up glucose for the budget for these films that we're playing on a daily basis. So I watched the film of my mind going, and I noticed that sometimes the film just shut off. When I really was aware of my breath, aware of my step, there were spaces, maybe they were only 1 second, maybe only 2 seconds, when I wasn't thinking about anything. And in those moments, I felt totally free. I thought, wow, how come I never noticed these spaces before? It's kind of like in the old film when you have frames, and suddenly there's some skipped frames, and you get the blank screen. It's not that it's so pleasant, it's not that it's so terrible. It's just blank. Nothing going on. And I learned that with my mindful breathing and my step, I could widen those spaces. I could make them longer. And when I did that, I noticed that I had no anger. I was no longer angry in those moments. And that's when I got it. My thinking is feeding my anger. It's not what my brother did or said, but it's my own thinking, wanting to be equal, wanting to be the same. And blaming someone outside of myself for not letting me be equal. And so I was able to widen those gaps until the anger became weaker and weaker. And with time, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, I was able to go back to my room. Many times during that half an hour, I had played the film of bursting into his room and giving him a piece of my mind. Oh, yes! But instead, I went back to my room and I laid down and my heart was at peace. And I even believed that the next morning when I woke up and I had to lead the guided meditation, and when he came in and he saw that I was very calm and peaceful, I think he was a little bit surprised. Because I think he felt what was going on inside of me. I didn't need to say it or express it. What I had done, and the insight that I got from that practice, was that I had a fear of my anger. That I feared getting into situations in my life that brought about anger, that brought about fear, that brought about sadness, unpleasant emotions, and that I'd been living my life in fear of my own emotions. That I didn't know actually how to tolerate them, how to recognize them, embrace them, that they are a part of me. I was not treating them as full citizens in my mind. They were something to get rid of, because now I'm a monk. Now I'm someone who doesn't have anger. Now I'm someone who doesn't have jealousy. And so I just put all those things down. But it doesn't work like that. Yeah. So instead, I allowed my anger to come up and I really looked deeply into it, embraced it. So I started to overcome my fear of looking in, my folly. My fear of looking in. And when we overcome the fear of looking in, there's no longer any fear of missing out. Because we have happiness and joy right where we are. We don't need to find it somewhere else. This FOMO has become very popular on social media with young people. They've done many studies and they see that when people who use Facebook actually become more depressed. They are looking at their friends online and seeing all the wonderful, exciting, joyful things that are happening in other places without them, and they have FOMO. That's where this expression, or at least it's become very popular on social media. The young people get FOMO and then they live their lives in order to create FOMO for others. Is that shocking? It's not so shocking when we see how we live our lives to try to get something, to achieve something. And when we look deeply and see that wanting to achieve, that title, that position, that inside that special group, that we ourselves, a little bit, are creating exclusion for others. Because not everybody, if everyone is invited to that special group, then what's so special about it? If that person is invited there, then why would I want to be a part of it? Yeah? These things operate at a deeper level in our mind. And we see it in that interaction of the children in the kindergarten when they have the toy and they don't want the other one to play with it. It's a scarce resource. The toy is a scarce resource. And we are the ones who want access to those scarce resources. And if everybody had access, well, it wouldn't be there anymore. Fortunately, the Buddha had an insight, which is that happiness is available to everyone. It's available everywhere, and it only depends on how we take care of our mind. So I'd like to suggest that this FOMO is a part of the second noble truth. It's worthy of being studied as a cause of suffering. FOMO. And fortunately, the Buddha didn't stop there. He had another insight, which is the insight of well-being, the ending of ill-being. There's a way out of ill-being, and the way out is in. When we overcome our fear of looking inside ourselves, our constant need to search for a new novel to read, a new film to watch, something to eat in the refrigerator. You ever have that fear of dealing with a difficult emotion and you go to the refrigerator, open it up, kind of contemplate inside for a little while, let the cool air waft out of the refrigerator? That's the fear of looking in. We have a fear of our own emotion, just like I spoke about. It makes us avoid situations in our lives, avoid people, avoid situations. In Plum Village, when you come here, you're invited to share a room with other people. It's our way of helping you practice overcome your fear of living, of being together with those we don't like. And find out that maybe by the end of the week, hopefully, we are enjoying the happiness of being together with those we do like. Because as we begin to practice and we go deeper in our practice, we see that the transformation in the other person and in ourselves, and we see that what binds us here, what allows us to live together is our practice of mindfulness. And that allows us to overcome our fear of feeling trapped in with that person. So the path of well-being is we can find from from Jali, the joy of looking in. We find out that actually, when we shine the light of mindfulness on our strong emotion, like anger, we actually can feel joy. When the anger is overwhelming, it might not be joyful yet. In that moment, at the beginning, I could not feel joy. The only thing that I could do was widen those spaces, was stop feeding my anger, and just allow those spaces, at least if I don't feel joyful, at least I can feel neutral. But in Plum Village, we practice to see neutral feelings as joyful feelings. It's like when most of us right now, we don't have a toothache. We're sitting here and our teeth are okay. But in the past, how many of us have had a bad toothache? Okay, maybe half of us. The rest of us are lucky. Wow. I had a really bad toothache once in Thailand. There's a lot of sugar in the food and my tooth got infected. And so I got to live what my teacher was always teaching, which is the pain of having a toothache and the joy of not having a toothache. So when we have a toothache, we suffer so much, we have so much pain, and the only thing we can think of is how joyful it would feel to not have a toothache. But most of our lives, we don't have any toothache, and we don't appreciate the fact that we don't have a toothache. We just want something more. We're caught in a cycle of missing out, feeling like we're missing out on the real happiness, the real joy. And so we look for other things, and we don't appreciate this neutral feeling of not having a toothache. Right now, I don't have a toothache, and that is a condition for my happiness. So that is already a path of well-being, the joy of looking in. You look in and you see, right now, I feel okay. That is a big happiness. Right now, I'm not lost in my sadness. Or maybe I have a little bit of sadness, and then I bring mindfulness. The same mindfulness that we've been learning over the past 2 days, or maybe longer, that you've been here. You bring your attention back to your breath. Just be aware of the breath coming in and out. You're aware of your body. You calm your body, your whole body. When you're able to calm your mind and your body in that way, right away you feel joy, like a joy to be alive, a joy to be still living on this planet. That is the joy of looking in. And then when a strong emotion comes up, like anger or sadness, you already have trained yourself to be aware of that emotion with mindfulness, with concentration. Concentration just means you maintain your awareness for the whole length of your breath. So that day I practiced concentration with mindfulness. I was aware of the anger during the whole time of experiencing anger. Because if we just recognize it and then shift our attention somewhere else, we have a fear of looking in, and we try to look for things outside, then we don't actually understand the roots of our anger. We don't see what is nourishing the anger. We don't see the roots in our thinking, in our perceptions. And we miss out. We really miss out. So the real fear of missing out should drive us to practice, because the real missing out happens within ourselves. There's nothing going on outside ourselves. There's nothing to miss out on out there. There's no special conference, no special retreat, no special secret teaching. All we're invited to do is to overcome our fear of looking in and see it as a joy, a real joy. And when we get the joy of looking in, it gives rise to the joy the jodo, the joy of dropping out. The path of well-being. The joy of dropping out. In the 60s, they used to say, be in and drop out. It means we become fully aware of ourselves by dropping out of this mainstream of society that is always pushing us to run for achievements, for a career, for money, a house, a car, a marriage, kids, a retirement plan, a pension, and eventually, hopefully, death in a calm and peaceful place. That is the attainment that the world offers us to run after. And the Buddha invites us to drop out. Don't think that the Buddha didn't suffer from FOMO. I think many people, they are embarrassed to admit that they have FOMO. When some exciting party is happening or some important meeting, some decision is happening and they're not there to be part of that decision. They're afraid to admit that they have that fear of missing out. And so they check their email every hour, check their mobile phone. Did they get that text message? The golden text message that will relieve all suffering. The one you've waited for your whole life. That golden email, the one special email. All those years of clicking, refresh, refresh, refresh. The golden email will appear and all of your suffering will vanish in an instant. So we're invited to touch the joy of dropping out. In Plum Village, our teacher invites us to practice not having a personal email address. Full disclosure, right now I have a personal email address. But for many years as a monk, I practiced not to have a personal email address. And to be honest, right now I'm trying to find a way to get out of having a personal email address. Because I see that my teacher had a lot of deep wisdom, actually. Because having a personal email address is like having it's like you have a to-do list that everybody can post to, anywhere, at any time. They have your email address, and they can send you what they want you to do. And they can be reasonably certain that you actually will open it and read it. And so you have no excuse. So when I got that insight, recently I had that insight about my email inbox. It's like a personal to-do list that suddenly everyone in the world can post to at any time, whenever it occurs to them that they think I should be doing something, that I don't have enough things in my life to be happy. And they want to contribute one extra bit of happiness for me to take part in. So I'm finding ways to drop out of having a personal email. It's kind of complicated, but the reason I can do it is that I realized that having all those years when I didn't have a personal email address, actually I had a lot of freedom. In some ways, some aspects I have more freedom now, but in other aspects I want to have that kind of freedom again, of not having that universally accessible to-do list. Dropping out means letting go. And there's a big happiness that comes from letting go. It means we need to let go of our plans, our idea of happiness. We have to realize that the world's ideas of happiness and our ideas of happiness can be our biggest obstacle to happiness, to really being happy, to really being free. Once we overcome the fear of missing out, it becomes very easy to practice the joy of dropping out. That movie, you feel you have to see it. Suddenly, it's not so important. That party, that special gathering of the most important people that you feel like you need to be a part of, you no longer feel like you need to be there. You can be there, but your happiness, your joy does not depend on it anymore because you found it here. You no longer fear looking inside. You're able to embrace the difficult emotions and just let go. Let go of all the things that you want, the things that make you think, that nourish your anger and your sadness. And you don't feel lonely anymore. You don't miss out at anything because everything is right here and right now. That is the essence of Plum Village teaching. I have arrived, I am home. Tai calls it the cornerstone of Plum Village. I have arrived, I am home. And it doesn't only exist here. It goes with us wherever we are. If we really practice arriving, we practice dropping out of the rat race, this incessant need to run. We can really be joyful. There's another, I'll give one more acronym. The essence of the Four Noble Truths is DHPM. This one you cannot pronounce. No. This is dwelling happily in the present moment. This is the greatest fruit of the practice. Just to be here, happy in the present moment. And this happiness doesn't mean you don't have sadness. It doesn't mean you don't have anger. It doesn't mean that you don't get an upset stomach from time to time. It doesn't mean that you don't have a serious physical illness. It means you don't add any suffering to that illness, to the pain of that illness. You don't add anything else on top of it from your thinking. You just accept things as they are. You fully happy, free from any kind of worry or fear. That is dwelling happily in the present moment. And it's the biggest obstacle to realizing this is our idea of happiness. What we want. So if we're able to let go, we're able to drop out of that mainstream of our life. Even though our parents trained us to live in that way, even though our society has trained us to live in that way, if we want to be truly happy and free, we will do it. Because it is that important. It is urgent. It is urgent. Because Life is very short. It goes very, very quickly. And we think we have so many options today. We can choose anything. We can get on the internet, we can go to Amazon.com, we can buy anything. But we know in our heart, that's why we're here in Plum Village, that those things will not bring us happiness. We're no longer caught in the delusion. We benefit from this collective energy of a sangha going together, freeing ourselves from this mass delusion of consumption, of the idea that we can find happiness in a career, that we can find happiness in a title, in a salary, in a consumer item, in a car. Yeah. That's why we're here. We're practicing together as brothers and sisters. Because it's not easy. That is not the tendency of the world. The Buddha, he often described it like it's going against the stream. The stream is the flow of society, which is just going from birth to death in an endless stream of consumption. So we invite you, at least for 1 week, to practice dropping out. Plum Village is like training wheels for dropping out. And if you want to stay a long time, well, we can find ways for that to happen. So I invite all of you who are looking into what should I do with my life. You can practice overcoming your fear of missing out, and practice the joy of dropping out. We call it the 5-year training in monastic life in Plum Village. Instead of going for 4 years to college or university, you go to 5 years and you drop out. You be in and drop out in Plum Village. So here in Plum Village we have many young men and women who are in a 5-year program now. They're practicing to be monastics for 5 years so they can learn how to take care of strong emotions, learn how to drop out from a while. Tai, our teacher, he said you learn how to freeze. You can freeze your bank account. You can freeze your girlfriend. He said, freeze your girlfriend? Really? I don't know if she'll be happy about that. No, he means we can put aside our money, put aside all of our plans, all our commitments for 5 years, and practice letting go completely. Really just living in the present moment, learning what it means to be a free and happy person in a community that supports our aspiration to transform, to be free. And then we no longer feel lonely. We no longer feel separated. We no longer feel that we're missing out on life. Yeah. It's not a guarantee. There are monastics, even here in Plum Village, and they still suffer from FOMO. They still feel that something somewhere else better is happening, and that what's going on here is not somehow good enough. But I have not found yet anywhere on this planet any community where we can learn to overcome this FOMO, to really touch our freedom and happiness as thoroughly as we do here in Plum Village. So that's an invitation. If you have any questions about it, we have many young aspirants here in gray robes. You can come up to them. I'm sure they'll like to share about their experience with you and what it means to practice the joy of dropping out. Yeah, thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day.